Now, you might think I'm in here to avoid the allergies, to be in a dust-free environment. Wrong! I'm Fred Trost from the Practical Sportsman, and we are going to show you how to build this ice fishing shanty. The great thing about it is, only costs 35 bucks. Hey, stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. You're watching the Practical Sportsman.
Fred Trost's Practical Sportsman is brought to you by D.L. Kessler & Sons Construction, specializing in residential development and commercial construction since 1977, and by the financial support of viewers like you.
Oh, there's a deer. See it? It's walking through the woods. Oh, there's a whole lot of deer. See them? They're feeding along the road. This video was taken by Don Scott of Scott's Superior Inn in Ontonagon last year when the winter was knocking the heck out of the UP's deer herd. The UP chapter of Whitetails Unlimited was feeding deer as well as trapping and tagging them to study their winter feeding patterns. To tag their ears, they had to pull the deer out of the live traps by their back legs.
Okay. Got it! Okay, Terry, this one goes on this here.
Tagging deer isn't something that you can do as a private individual. The UP Whitetails group did this with the help of DNR biologists. The dangerous part is letting the deer go.
Okay. Let me get out of the way. Go. Okay, I'm going to roll over. Okay.
Well, the deer were a little startled by the experience, but tagging their ears didn't hurt them at all. And nobody from the UP Whitetails was hurt either. Thanks to Don Scott, we could see this process of trapping deer from the UP deer yards. Winter is a long ways from being over, but hopefully 1997 will go easy on the deer herd. If not, our UP deer will once again need some extra help to survive until spring. Now that was last year's video from Don Scott up there at the west end of the UP. Interesting kickoff to this year because we're wondering what the weather is going to do with the deer.
Yeah, especially the last few weeks have been tons of snow.
Have you got any videos in this year?
Yeah, we've got,
deer?
well, we had probably, Matt, 3 or 4 we've gotten in so far,
Yeah.
deer.
I have to start rolling those in. Now, are you going to start doing this at the beginning of the show?
No, I don't know. It's a new year. I just wanted to try something different.
Okay, because normally,
I mean,
for years
there's some
and
great
years,
videos that come in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why not put them on the air? People want to see them, and it shows what's happening sometimes right now in the state.
So we'll put that on first. But now we'll go to where we've normally started the show with the feature.
That's right.
And this features the man. This is John's introduction in the workshop. On a day like this, nobody would sit out on the ice trying to catch fish. I mean, nobody. Well, nobody except this guy. He tried it for a little while, but he didn't catch much, and he didn't stay long. Now, if you're going to ice fish on a day like this, and we did, it's absolutely necessary to have an ice fishing shanty. A permanent shanty made from wood is the most durable, and it will withstand those cold Arctic winds. We have a revised plan, Maddie. We're not going to try to anchor it by putting the anchor upwind and holding it that way because we're afraid it's going to slide back and forth. We're going to use this guy's shanty and put, because the wind's blowing so hard, as a sort of a backstop and let it blow up against the shanty. What do you think? Sounds good. Let's try it here, Charlie. A permanent shanty is the best if you don't mind leaving it in one spot for a week or 2 or more. If you like to move from spot to spot frequently, the new portable shanties are the best because they're lightweight. In a strong winter wind, they can be too lightweight though. You have to sit inside to hold them down or snug them up against a permanent shanty as we did. The Clam is a popular portable shanty, self-contained in a plastic sled which forms the floor. It opens into a flat piece on the floor with no dividers. Now, when we did this product test a few years ago, we used the older model of the Clam. The newer ones have a scissors-type pole system that sets up much faster than what you see here. So I see this is an entire separate unit here. Doesn't come attached, you have to put it together. I can see one disadvantage that there might be here is in a wind, a heavy wind, it would be a challenge.
In the wind, it is a little bit of a challenge, especially when you're doing it by yourself. The instructions.
Well, this is the Clam. It comes in 3 models, 3 sizes that range in price from $169 for a 4x6 to $469 for the big 8x8 sleeper model. The Chappelle Minuteman is an old favorite. It's also been updated with a model that has a plastic floor called the Chappelle 3000, but the Minuteman is still a popular model among ice fishermen. Now this one has a floor in it, which you have to have flat snow. You can't have ice chunks or anything because it could kind of make the floor unstable and even break the floor, I imagine. So here's what they're doing. Yeah, get around here, John. You can see on this end. There are aluminum poles that set up on each end. Look at these guys go, trying to beat the clock here.
It makes you a little nervous.
Okay, now this one has a principle of a rod that goes on the inside between the aluminum frame. The Minuteman with the wooden floor goes for $179, $10 more for the model with the plastic floor. Now, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you might want to consider the Senko Super Shack. This is a deluxe shanty that Earl Sinchuk from Marquette puts out. He found that the cost of putting it together at the factory was prohibitive. Ice fishermen just wouldn't buy it. People didn't want to pay $500 for a portable shanty, so he sold it as a kit, which knocked over $100 off the price tag, and fishermen found that $389 was a lot more feasible. Now on the ice, the Super Shack unfolds with the top and bottom turning into the front and the back instead of forming the floor of the shanty. The Super Shack has a separate floor that is actually folded up in between the 2 ends, and it drops down when you open this whole thing up. Inside, there's a pole across the top that keeps the ends in place. It's roomy, tall enough that a 6-foot guy can stand up inside, but we're talking $389. Some fishermen might want to ice fish just now and then, not enough to justify spending $200 or $300 or $400 on a shanty. Well, John Ford has a solution for this budget problem.
So the question is it possible to build an ice fishing shanty for under $50? Well, you bet it is. Joseph Thompson from Royal Oak sent us these plans in the January issue of the Wilderness Journal. And if you look in the Practical Sportsman section, you'll find what he did is he used plywood, 4x8 sheets of plywood. We're going to use chipboard because we're going to save a few bucks that way. We're also going to need some 2x2s and some fairing strips. And in order to make the covering for it, you could use a camper-style type of a tarp used for camping. But what we're going to do is we're going to use a heavy plastic sheeting. It's about 4 mil, which should do the job for us. Now, for the hinges, you're going to need some hinges for the doorway, and the duct tape, well, we'll show you what that's going to be for. But first, let's get started and cut off a little bit of the top for the door. Taking a look at Joseph Thompson's shanty, you'll notice that the roof is rounded at the top. Well, we like that idea because we think it takes up less space in the back of the truck and it reduces the overall weight. But now how do you make sure that when you make your cuts, you take the same amount of wood off both sides? Well, on our 4x6 piece of chipboard, you want to measure in 2 feet from the side of the board and then measure 2 feet down from the top. With a felt marker attached to a 2-foot piece of string, draw a semicircle around the top of the board. This is what's going to be the front of our shanty right here. I just finished cutting out the door. We use the saber saw to also cut out the radius for the top of the shanty. Now, one tip about the door. You can really make the door any size you want to. But remember, it's wintertime, and you're going to have all your winter clothes on, so make sure that you make it big enough. It's finally starting to look like something. Now, what we're doing, we went ahead and we put in the 2x2 side supports just temporarily so we could put on the plastic on the outside. I used a utility knife to cut off all the excess plastic here, but I'm a little concerned that this plastic might tear. So what we're going to do is use a piece of duct tape on here, and if you look very closely at this, you can see it's got webbing throughout it. Now hopefully that'll, when we staple through this layer, that'll keep the plastic from tearing. Inside our shanty here, this pole in the center is temporarily screwed in the sides just to keep it so we could put the plastic on the top. But ultimately what we want to do is to be able to collapse this whole thing down and put it in the back of a truck. So we cut out these V's, and what will happen is once this temporary screw is removed, that'll simply slide right down into place. Well, putting the door on was a piece of cake because we'd already cut it out earlier. All I needed to do was to put a couple of pin hinges in there. And the door handle, it's just rope with a knot tied in it. But Matt Radzalowski had a good idea. He thought about putting these door stops in here because if you don't, when you close the door, you could break off your hinges. Well, we tried to make this whole thing as light as possible, but we're still going to need a little help getting it across the ice. So we'll put this tow bar in here, and all we have to do is to put a rope in here to pull and finish up putting in the skis, and we'll be all ready to go ice fishing. Well, Matt Radzalowski, you get a big assist here for finishing the skis for me.
Well, I don't know if I want to take credit for the skis, John, after the way they performed. Basically, I just made those out of some scrap wood we had laying around the workshop. But if I was to do it again, I'd go to the garage sale and see if I can't find some budget skis.
Yeah, that actually is a good idea because on a day like today when the sun's real beating down on the ice and it's real hard pack, it's not bad at all. But if you were to get
any accumulation of snow on that ice, boy, you got a workout ahead of you.
Exactly. Yeah, it was about 30 degrees. It was a gorgeous day out on Park Lake here. Yep, it was perfect.
We probably didn't need a shanty, but the winds picked up later on in the day, and it was kind of nice to have.
Yeah, now it's probably, would you say this is a two-man job or what?
It is a two-man job. One man could probably do it. Now, you don't have to make it as long as we did. If you were to shorten up the overall length, it's a lot easier for one man to put it together.
Right. Now, one of the things I do like is we use the plastic sheeting, which is attached to the frame. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not going to blow in a heavy wind. That will not blow around the lake like, you know, maybe some of the other models.
Right. No, that kind of keeps it tied together a lot nicer and makes assembly real easy.
Now, whose idea was this? Was this yours or Joseph's?
No, those are the V-notches there. That's what I came up with. It kind of makes a nice way to locking the shanty together and makes it very portable.
All set. Ready to go. Now, we don't have a floor in our ice fishing shelter, but do you think we should go ahead and drill our holes first?
Oh, definitely. Drill your holes first and then pull your shanty on top of the holes. You don't want to take a chance of maybe poking the auger through the side of the shanty, or else having your hand slip off and punching it through that way.
Well, even if it did, it would only cost us about $6. In fact, that's why we went with the clear plastic sheeting instead of the heavy blue tarp, because that was about $24, and we wanted to save some money.
Yeah, not only that, it has a lot of advantages, too. Not only letting the sun's warmth come in, but as far as us videotaping, it's really a big plus. In a dark shanty, it's hard to find your gear. This is going to help you find your gear and even help you bait your hook a little easier.
Yeah, not only that, but it's a heck of a lot easier to see what's going on and to see, well, to see your spring bobber, for one thing. Here, you got that? See him?
Yep, yep.
Oh, there we go. Not too bad.
A little small for a keeper.
A little small, but I think maybe we'll put him back.
How do you like the shanty?
It's not bad. I kind of feel like I live in a greenhouse.
Well, nice and warm, though, eh?
It stays really, really warm in here. It's great. Put him back. Now, the fishing wasn't exactly fantastic, Matt, but I like the clear sides on the shanty.
One benefit of that is you could keep your eye on your tip up and also see what the other fishermen are doing as well.
That's right. Another benefit maybe for people, a family, for example, that doesn't fish a whole lot, doesn't want to sink a couple $100 into an ice fishing shanty. For $35, you can have yourself a fantastic shanty, and I think we have to give it 2 thumbs up.
The team effort with Matt Radzalowski on the plans
Yep.
and helping you in the workshop.
So what'd you think?
I thought that was pretty cool.
Worked out good.
I don't know what line of work you're going to go into. I just can't tell. You're taking over everybody's jobs anymore.
That's not true. Well, we use clear. In the picture here, it's got a dark, I guess a solid colored tarp.
Yeah, Joe Thompson from Royal Oak made this with the traditional type of tarp, but you try the clear, and there's pros and cons. We'll see how that works out. Now, I would like to turn to a different section here in the Practical Sportsman Guide, our scattered shots.
Well, we got some hot topics.
You know, I wish they were more scattered because they all seem to be aimed at me.
Focused.
They do. But this has to do with this letter here, 6-point blunder. And it isn't just one letter. Tons of people wrote in lambasting me for shooting a 6-point buck when the landowner said, and we made a big deal on the feature, that in this particular blind, generally they just take the bigger bucks.
That's right.
Now, what viewers, all the ones who wrote in, did not hear was my explanation right after I shot the buck, that the landowner, Paul Kieswetter, instructed me to shoot any deer the next morning, because we just had that next morning to hunt. And so I was under the instruction to do that, and then we were in cahoots, even with the landowner, on this top 10 methods of scoring a buck.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you know, we were doing it for the fun of deer camp.
Yeah. Paul's a great guy, too. He's a jokester. And unfortunately, people don't listen to everything on the show because he was in on this whole deal.
He was, but I can't blame it on you viewers totally because, you know, we put the story together. I wrote the script.
I think mostly people are blaming you.
Well, you know, they're blaming me for violating what the landowner stated as a rule. I explained that he changed the rule, but I explained that moments after I actually shot the deer on camera. I think at that point at home, people say, hey, you know, they're talking.
Did you see him shoot that?
Yeah, did you see him? He wasn't supposed to do that. And let's write a letter. And that's what they did. Well, actually, I had permission to do that, but people didn't catch it. That was my fault sequencing it in the script. But, you know, this does bring up the point. A legal angle on this? Could there have been anything illegal or, you know, that the landowner could have had action against me for?
That's right.
Well, we're going to have to talk to Sal about that. Let's look at this now as a question of law, Sal, as to what regulations somebody can put on the use of their land to people who, say, are invited, like we were. We didn't pay to hunt there. We were invited. Can the landowner just make any regulation they want? I mean, could they say you have to wear all blaze orange, you can't put out any carrots or any bait, you can't have a loaded gun near camp? I mean, could they make up all kinds of regulations even if what they say is not violating the law?
Well, sure, the landowner can do whatever he likes. The landowner can say, you can come on my property and do A, B, C, nothing else. They have exclusive rights to the property ownership, and they can control whatever you do. And you're on there basically at their consent. What you have is a license to be there at their permission. And if you do something they don't like, they can tell you to leave. Even if you don't do anything they don't like, they can tell you to leave anytime, and then you have to leave. If not, you're a trespasser, they can call the police and have you evicted.
So that's when it's just an invitation.
Correct.
What about if there's money paid for this? And this is getting bigger and bigger in Michigan, where people will say, yeah, you can come and hunt, but it'll, for the first week of the season, it'll be $300. Does that change that at all?
It does, yes, and I spoke with many viewers in the last couple months on this. If you now give a lease to the property, you're giving people permission to be on the property. You can, in that lease, put restrictions on what they can and cannot do. And if they violate a restriction lease, then the lease could be determined to be void. You can take them to court to evict them or just try and eject them as a trespasser.
But it gets a little stickier when you call the police and the person who has the lease says, hey, officer, I have a lease.
The important thing is what the lease says. The language of the lease controls everything. So you've got to draft the lease properly to protect yourself and your property.
Ah, well, that would be a good subject sometime at the museum. Here, we've been talking about this, having a workshop or a seminar on a Saturday, talking to landowners and people who want a lease about drawing up leases. It's a good one because this is a complicated area.
It's a complicated one. A lot of people have a lot of questions on it, too.
Sheila is from Middleville and Gun Lake in Berry County. Whoa, this must have popped people's eyes out when you came to shore with this.
Actually, no, unfortunately, there wasn't anybody there at the time.
Oh,
you know, when you catch the big ones, nobody's ever around.
Okay, hold
Except my husband, which is my tip, okay? You always go fishing with your honey.
Okay, now how does your husband fit into this? Just a joke, just a joke.
No, it's
I mean nothing by it, just for laughs.
Okay, I always go fishing with him. In fact, I make him nervous in his shanty, so he built me my own shanty, okay?
Ah.
So this one came in, and when I saw it, it was on the outside of my hole on the left side, and it was not a good spot to spear, and my husband also taught me how to spear, so you don't just throw.
Mm-hmm. And what is that technique? Why don't you share that?
Okay, you put the spear all the way into the water before you heave it. Okay, make sure you have a good shot. However, it was on the outside of my hole, looking at my 13.5-inch sucker. And I was waiting for it to come in, and it didn't come in. So I finally thought, well, nobody's going to believe how big this is, so might as well take a shot at it. And I did. I got it. I knew I didn't have it speared good. Opened my shanty door and yelled out, "Larry, come over!" And he did, and swam out of my hole 3 times with my spear and all the rope, and pulled him back in. And I told my husband, "Go get your spear, it's not speared well." He says, "Well, let me see how big it is." And when he saw how big it was, he said, "I don't want to throw my spear down there and knock yours out, then we'll never get it." And I said, "How are we going to get it up?" And he says, "Well, you just pull it up and I'll grab it by the gills." Of course, I said, "That's never going to work." And I did it, and he reached down, grabbed it, pulled it right up, because I couldn't have done it myself.
Man, that's something else. Well, you know, you just don't see muskies like this every time you go out and sit in the shanty.
No.
Do you?
No.
Or you see a lot of them?
I got a 44-inch one this year on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
And right off the beach where people swim. So, but you do have to sit there a long time.
Well, that's great. What an outstanding story. 34 pounds, 12 ounces, 49-incher, and already this season you got a 44-incher. That's something else. Well, give your honey my regards.
I will.
I might want to. The onstage storytelling is one highlight of the evening. The other is the buffet dinner prepared by John McKenzie and Coyles of Houghton Lake. Carved round of beef, chicken, lasagna, salad bar, desserts, vegetables. Everybody sits and listens to the stories because they're too full to move. These are happy banquets. If you're not an award winner this year but would like information on attending, give us a call. Well, the past 2 weeks, at this time of the week, we've been reporting, Arctic blasts, freezing things. Now we have a major thaw. Well, it's making a mess outdoors, but there's still fishing and hunting to be had. Houghton Lake, a site of Tip-Up Town, again this weekend. Of course, it'll be a much different weekend. They're getting some, as of last weekend, some good pike and walleye fishing and crappie. Over here at Pilgrim Village in Cadillac, fishing has been fair because of the weather. Now the weather is fair also, so maybe the fishing will improve. Ludington, they've been getting good catches of fish. Down at Whitehall, excellent pike fishing on White Lake, some limits of perch. Saugatuck, some good crappie fishing and gills on some local lakes. Rabbit hunting is fair. Of course, I think this warmer weather, though, ought to even get those rabbits into high gear, a lot of activity. Trenton Lighthouse on the Detroit River, perch and pike have been excellent. Walleye are hit and miss. Lake St. Clair has been slow, and I imagine this water on the ice and thawing is going to really make it bad. Linwood, Frank says that walleye limits in Saginaw River, and by the way, the fishing Pinconning and north has been the safest ice, so stay north of Pinconning. It's been maybe 10 inches out for about a mile, mile and a half. Up at Oscoda, they've been getting some good perch in Van Etten Lake and Steelhead there in the Ausable River have been hitting. Long Lake, Alpena, have been getting some good perch catches. Those are holding up. Pike and walleye have been slow, though. Now, Indian River, let's catch this before we cross the bridge. A good walleye in Burt Lake, and pike have been good in Mullet Lake. Drummond Island, rabbit hunting. They always seem to have good rabbit hunting there at Drummond Island. The tree line to Canada is in, so snowmobilers can get across to Canada. Over here in Bay de Noc, Little Bay de Noc, splake and walleye have been fair. Perch are hit and miss, but they're nice-sized perch. Marquette, fishing has been a little slow, but the whitefish are starting in Munising. West end of the UP, been getting some good perch catches, according to Don. It's got Superior in, and pike have been good in Chassel Bay. And up in the Keweenaw, Dick Blau reports fishing has been slow because of snow and slush. Take a look at our ice map there, and you'll see the depth or the thickness of the ice has been, up until this thaw, decent all over the state, even in the south. Of course, this thaw is going to make it iffy down in the southern part of the state on many of the lakes, especially that shore ice. But you add the snow on top of this. Now again, this snow report was from a few days ago. We've lost quite a bit of that snow in the south, but that turns to slush. And that's been the problem. But despite all that, if the temperatures are mild and the ice is thick enough, get outdoors if you can. It's a great place to be. We'll see you next week. As a member of the Practical Sportsman, you'll receive our official monthly publication, The Wilderness Journal, edited by Kevin Drake. This publication contains outdoor news, information on outdoor businesses, an update on the pulse of the outdoors in Michigan and throughout the Midwest. Only Practical Sportsman members receive The Practical Sportsman's Guide, which is mailed inside the Wilderness Journal. Half of the guide features questions and comments from viewers about the show, along with answers. The inside features a time schedule for all the weekly outdoor-related programs on Michigan Public TV stations. It has our recipes for the month. There's a plan for a homemade ice shanty and a listing of Big John Fishing Award winners for January and Deer Quest Hunting Awards for October. Joining the Practical Sportsman also includes a membership in the Michigan Sportsman Congress. If you'd like a sample copy of the January issue, drop me a line at Box 1001, Bath, Michigan 48808, enclose $1 for expedited 3-day delivery.
Fred Trost's Practical Sportsman is brought to you by D.L. Kessler & Sons Construction, specializing in residential development and commercial construction since 1977, and by the financial support of viewers like you.
On a day like this, nobody would sit out on the ice trying to catch fish. I mean, nobody. Well, nobody except this guy. He tried it for a little while, but he didn't catch much, and he didn't stay long. Now, if you're going to ice fish on a day like this, and we did, it's absolutely necessary to have an ice fishing shanty. A permanent shanty made from wood is the most durable, and it will withstand those cold Arctic winds. We have a revised plan, Maddie. We're not going to try to anchor it by putting the anchor upwind and holding it that way because we're afraid it's going to slide back and forth. We're going to use this guy's shanty and put, because the wind's blowing so hard, as a sort of a backstop and let it blow up against the shanty. What do you think? Sounds good. Let's try it here, Charlie. Pick it from Marion. Thank you for